morning, everyone. I want you all to listen to the following statements and raise your hand if you have heard or said something along the lines of these statements before. And when you raise your hand, please keep it raised. Don't be shy. The camera's pointed this way. The first statement is, you don't have a right to talk about this issue because of who you are and or group that you are a part of. This group, by the way, can be anything from race to gender to ethnicity, etc. Okay, that's a few of you. Please keep your hands raised. The next statement, you don't understand me, so don't judge me. All right. Now the last statement, you can only judge me when you're perfect. That's most of you with your hands up. Why? Because these are common phrases. We've heard them, we've said them, and they pop up whenever someone doesn't want to hear what someone else has to say. We live in a society where judgment is a stigma. In other words, forming an opinion or a conclusion about something is a stigma. And I believe that this is terribly harmful for our society. We can't hear different perspectives if we, as members of society, are closed-minded to discussing different aspects of society. We need to have the maturity to be able to face judgment. Society can't hear out different ideas if we, individuals who have those different ideas, are afraid of sharing our views and judgments because we're afraid of being perceived as judgmental. We need to have the ability and bravery to judge. In short, we need judgment. We need judgment because critiquing different practices in a society depends on its citizens to make value judgments. These judgments initiate dialogue. They allow different sides to come together and share their views on a subject. And through this, society can dig deeper and ask questions such as, why do we do what we do? What comes out of it? What are the implications of it? And what can we do better? And in this process, we will either restore our belief in our institutions and customs because we will have been able to justify them and thus garner an appreciation for them, or we may change or abandon our ways altogether through movements for social change. Let's take slavery, for example. Since the dawn of its existence in the United States of America, there have been numerous critiques of it by abolitionists, which only grew stronger over the decades. These critiques facilitated dialogue, some of the most famous being the Lincoln-Douglas debates. Through these dialogues, society was able to evaluate the institution, comprehend why we have it, understand whether we need it, and ponder upon what it says about us. And as a result of this more than 200-year struggle, we, as a general populace of the United States, can more or less agree that slavery is un-American. But imagine if the consensus back then was that since everyone is free to do as they wish, especially in the South, own slaves or not, that no one should critique the institution because you shouldn't judge people for what they do. Would we have really seen the amount of societal change we have witnessed through the abolitionist and civil rights movements? We wouldn't have. In fact, it's not just slavery. Every shift in public perception is a result of judgment made by members of society who made demands for change and initiated dialogue and allowed for that change to occur. Through judgment, by evaluating what we do, we can understand what works best for ourselves and for our society as a whole. As I mentioned before, we will either reinforce the beauty of our customs and traditions, or in the case of slavery, we will reform our institutions and abandon them altogether to make our society a greater one. But in order to reap these benefits of judgment, we need to make sure that we have the right environment for it in our society. We need to make sure that we have an environment that promotes free speech and intellectual diversity. In today's day and age, when free speech has increasingly come under attack, it is becoming ever more difficult for members of our society to share their judgments because they're afraid of having vicious labels and attacks flung against them. These labels are often utilized by members of society, by many of us even, because we are antagonistic towards judgment against our ideology. And these mentalities that we have take our society closer to existing within an echo chamber. And this is terribly harmful for our society because there's no growth in an echo chamber. There's no evolution for a society that exists within an echo chamber because there's no space for judgment or critique in an echo chamber. In order to ensure that our public remains open-minded to hearing different ideas, we have to make sure that we are open-minded and that we don't respond emotionally and impulsively with pejorative attacks and labels against those who disagree with us. We have to make sure that we foster a space where diversity of thought and inclusion of different ideas can freely occur. Even though sometimes these different ideas may make us upset or uncomfortable, we still have to be open to hearing them. Because being temporarily uncomfortable for the sake of growth is much greater than shutting yourselves off from people who disagree with you for the sake of staying within your comfort zone. That is not a sustainable model of life. So, as members of society who will be judged, we have to ensure that we remain open-minded to it so that society can grow. And as members of society who have different opinions than those around us, we have to make sure that we have the bravery to share our views and judgments. And when we share our views, we have to do it right. Until now, we've explored why judgment is a good thing and what kind of environment we need for judgment to occur. So let us now explore how to judge. Given that your judgment initiates the conversation, you set the tone of the dialogue. So it's important to remain respectful of those you're having a conversation with. The most important thing here is mindset. Don't judge with ego. Don't judge from the perspective of moral supremacy where you believe yourself to be moral and virtuous and the dissenters to be immoral and wrong, because that is not true, and believing so will shut out different perspectives. You have to be open to being proven wrong. So in order to have effective discourse, it's important to do two things. The first is speak from the I perspective. Don't initiate dialogue with statements that begin with phrases like, "You don't know what you're talking about," and "That's never going to happen." These statements reek of ego and make it seem like you believe yourself to be the objective authority on the ways of the world, which isn't true. Your ideas and your opinions come from your experiences in your life only. Therefore, they cannot be objective truths which apply to everyone. So instead of stating your opinion as if it were a fact, state it as if, well, it's an opinion. Say, based on my experiences, this is my view. Throughout my life, this is how I've seen something happen. By speaking from the I perspective, you make it apparent that what you're saying is your opinion and not an objective, absolute, divine truth. You make it apparent that you understand that what you're saying is a result of your experiences and that your conclusion could be wrong, which is very important. So first, speak from the I perspective. Next, throughout the course of discourse, do not attack and label people you disagree with statements that begin with phrases like, "This is," insert label here, "barbaric, offensive, racist." In your mind, their practice or idea may be the epitome of evil itself, but A, you're not going to get them to reflect on it by labeling them. Maybe in your mind, they are terrible people, but they're not going to become less terrible because you have called them terrible. In fact, they're likely going to increase their antagonism towards you. And B, through labeling, you most definitely won't understand why different people have different ideas. As I said, in your mind, they might be terrible, but they weren't born that way. There are different factors that have led to them developing the perspective that they have developed. So instead of shutting them off and not listening to them by labeling them, hear their story. Understand their story, but question their conclusion after taking their story into account. By hearing different perspectives, we begin to understand why different people in our society have different views, and we begin to understand society and humanity at large as a whole, which make our remedies of society and our understanding of society much wiser. So when judging, do two things. Speak from the I perspective and don't attack and label. Overall, this three-step process is my method for judgment. The Sakethram Desabhotla method for judgment, if you will, based on my views and experiences of the world. It starts when we avoid seeing judgment as an intrinsically negative thing that will harm our society and begin to view it as a positive thing that will aid in the growth and evolution of ourselves and our society. Then we need to make sure that we cultivate the right environment for judgment in our society, one that promotes free speech and intellectual diversity, where anyone with an idea and logic and reasoning to back it up is free to share their ideas. When we judge, we need to make sure that we do it respectfully, devoid of ego, so that we can allow for proper discourse to truly take place, where our society can evolve. Using these three steps, we need to constantly evaluate and reevaluate our ideas, question, and if necessary, reform them to make our society a greater one. Through freedom of speech and diversity of thought, we will judge with respect. Through our judgments, we will initiate dialogue, and through this dialogue and discussion, we shall evolve. In today's day and age, where many in our society are uncomfortable speaking to people who disagree with them, when many in our society are antagonistic to have conversations about controversial topics, we need to use this method to revitalize the state of discourse in our nation. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us use this and take society above and beyond. When you leave this building today, listen to different people. Share your views, allow them to share their views, and understand the people who disagree with you. And feel free to judge. Thank you very much.